Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cloud Wars Live, where we explore today's digital revolution by speaking with business executives and thought leaders who are changing how the world lives, works, plays, learns, and dreams. Our guest today is one of our favorite monthly digital all-stars, Sean Ammirati. Sean is a professor at the business school at Carnegie Mellon University, where he started the Corporate Startup Lab. He's also a venture capitalist. He's an author. He's a podcaster and a serial entrepreneur. Sean, welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Bob. There's a little bit of background noise here today, but we wanted to get this one in, so hopefully this will work out well for everybody.
Yeah, it looks like you're down at the stock exchange, Sean. You're getting ready maybe to, do some great things today.
Yeah, so we had an event last night for Carnegie Mellon at World Trade Center at Moody's Analytics. It was a really fun night, but I didn't think about commute time effectively. I don't have as much New York experience as you, Bob, so I didn't quite process the commute time correctly here. So
no problem at all. So Sean, really interesting things going on over the last week or so. I know at the Goldman Sachs Technology Investors Conference, a lot of the big tech executives were up there, and honest to gosh, Sean, I was blown away by some of the comments that were made by AWS Andy Jassy, the CEO there. And, he has done a phenomenal job with that company,
he has.
Pushing the size, the mass there, and the growth rate. But, it's folklore that they're disrupting other industries.
Yeah. I mean, if that's folklore, like I want to know, I want to make sure that we have the same definition there. You're right. He's been an incredible CEO, right? I mean, I believe he was CEO of the year for you a year ago, right? He's done an incredible job, period, full stop. Part of what he's done an incredible job of, as I understand it, is actually talking to their customers, right? So I want to know what customer told him that he or she is not worried about Amazon coming in, squeezing their margins and driving them out of business, right? And I'm a capitalist, like that's all fine. It's all fine. It's 100% fine. But man, I mean, we talked about this at the end of the year predictions episode. Like, he can say whatever he wants at Goldman, but he should have, after those stupid comments, walked down the hall, talked to their investment banking group, and figured out what do we need to do to make AWS a standalone business. Like, that's what he should have done at the Goldman Sachs conference, because it is not folklore. I can tell, I hear this all the time, and I'm sure you do as well. This is a major part of companies' decision-making process right now in terms of who they're going to go with, because they don't want to give their precious cash to somebody who turns around and eats their lunch. And I totally get that. That's totally fair. AWS would be one of the 10 most valuable companies in the world the day it went public. And I understand this basically works for everybody except for Jeff Bezos, right? Like, because right now Jeff Bezos is CEO of two of the most valuable companies in the world. I totally understand that dynamic. And another incredible CEO. This is not being critical, but like the reality is that asset is worth so much more as a standalone business. There are a ton of customers, I think, that would make very different decisions if AWS was a standalone entity. And the cash from spinning it out would allow Amazon to go do a lot more amazing things, which would oxygenate innovation in a way that needs to happen right now. So it makes sense from an Amazon perspective, but to call it folklore is literally, it's an embarrassment to the intelligence of everybody in that room. And you shouldn't be embarrassing people's intelligence that are going to need to spin you out as a standalone company. That's just, and ultimately investing. It was a crazy move. The more interesting point to me though today, I thought, Bob, is like, again, we've talked about this a lot, but if you're one of those customers, it's an interesting business decision. Do you go with Amazon or do you go with one of their competitors? But the more relevant point, I think, is you need to start playing offense, right? You cannot wait for Amazon to come enter your market and squeeze your margins and erode your market cap. Like, you need to go play offense yourself. You need to sort of, what we've talked about before is sort of the Disney Plus strategy, right? You need to go look at what are our unfair competitive advantages and win. And that may mean that you don't want to finance your competitors, but separately, you got to start playing offense. And that's the conversation Amazon's customers, I think, should really be having right now.
Yeah, Sean, it's interesting what you say there about, moving on offense, because look at a couple things that Microsoft has done recently and Google Cloud, right?
Sure.
AWS's biggest competitors. On the one hand, I thought this point that at that same investors conference that Thomas Kurian made, where he's describing how Google Cloud is going to take all the phenomenal capabilities of Google and Google Cloud,
Right.
from machine learning, AI, data
Sure.
management, privacy, security. He wants to move them up the stack into this whole new notion of a type of high-end application nobody's ever done before,
Right.
specifically built around AI data analytics. Then you've got Microsoft doing a number of things, making friends with all the other big tech companies, even Oracle, and they're building out a number of applications in different ways, the platform, the database stuff. And meanwhile, I'm not saying AWS hasn't done anything, but they seem to be stuck a little bit in the middle. And I think it's partly driven by this notion of what you've described there. So, Sean, those other two of the biggest, most powerful, best capitalized companies in the world, they're going to be throwing everything they have at this. And it's intriguing to hear you say AWS is a little bit shackled right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you're seeing is Microsoft and Google are doing in the cloud space exactly what retailers should do, what healthcare companies should do, what banks should do. All the, I mean, they're saying, what's our incumbency advantage? What are we best in the world at, right? I mean, I think Google can make a good claim that, like, on the ML and AI side, that there's plenty of unfair competitive advantage around the talent, but also the scale and the sort of things that Google is able to do just because of who Google is, that they can then bring to Google Cloud, which is interesting. Certainly on the Microsoft side, right? Like, Microsoft has a lot of, like, Satya has done an amazing job kind of pivoting the business in a way where, like, in B2B enterprise tech, there's a bunch of incumbency advantage for Microsoft, and they're now bringing it to the Microsoft Cloud, right? Like, Amazon, I think, they are the 800-pound gorilla in this space. They do have weird dynamics between AWS and the rest of this business. It does scare it just does. Like, folklore, like, that's just a stupid statement, but it does scare AWS customers. And now, I mean, they're fighting a two-sided war here, right? You've got Google on the tech side and Microsoft. Not that Microsoft doesn't have great tech, they absolutely do, but they're doing this in a very Microsoft enterprise tech kind of way. And I mean, it can't happen soon enough to make AWS a standalone company from my perspective.
Well, Sean, I'm going to toss out a couple things, and I realize this is a limited view, but it's an interesting view. Yesterday, we did an episode with the newest member of the Digital All-Stars, Peter Stubbe of ETR Research. They've got 10-year trendable data from CIOs and CTOs about the enterprise purchases they're making. He says that there's absolutely no question that in the last 6 months, Google Cloud's level of interest from buyers has gone up dramatically. And also Microsoft's has gone up, not as much as Google Cloud, but also quite significantly. Both of them are now revealing more of this forward-looking, front edge indicator interest from buyers, more so than AWS. And I think it goes back again to this notion of AWS can't sort of fully be who it is and what it needs to be while it's part of another very big, very powerful, very visible organization.
That's right.
And Sean, you think that Untethered was really intriguing. AWS right away, boom, they're going to become one of the 10 most valuable companies in the world.
I think absolutely. And here's why. Like, so those companies that you just mentioned still have other businesses that come along with them, right? So you want to make a bet on Google Cloud, or you want to make a bet on Microsoft Cloud, you still got to make a bet, in the case of Google, on a multi-billion-dollar advertising business. And there's questions, I think, important questions around sort of the macroeconomic trends around digital advertising that I think smart people may come to different conclusions around. But the reality is, that's part of the bet you're making. It's hard to uncouple Google Cloud from the rest of the Google digital advertising business. And Microsoft has a bunch of and in the case of Microsoft, I think these are real assets, but there's still other parts of their business with Word, Windows. I mean, they have, or Microsoft Office, I'm sorry, Microsoft Windows. I mean, there's real other parts of the business that you're also buying when you buy a share of Microsoft. If AWS was a standalone security, you could literally just make a bet on the macro trend of cloud computing. And I think there's a lot of very smart investment managers who would love to own basically an untethered, unencumbered, long short position on cloud computing. And I mean, so I'm actually interested, going back to the research that you mentioned. I haven't looked at that yet, but I'm curious. So that on a percent change, he's seen the interest in Google Cloud have the most growth, right?
Yeah.
But on absolute number basis, right? So on sort of the base they're growing from, what is the ranking he's seen?
Well,
do you know?
He did say, it's coming off something of a smaller base, but that, trending from last year to this year, when Google Cloud was certainly around all of last year, and then coming into this year, that the delta there for Google Cloud, the interest going up, is really quite dramatic. And he showed a
the growth, the percent growth is going up
and
most.
the interest, and you say, hey, I got to. And then Sean, Peter also had in his monthly series, would be called Stubby on Spending, because he's talking to the people who are making these buying decisions. He said he also does some qualitative research, and over and over again in these qualitative interviews he had with buyers, they said Google's always had great technology. Now they have the leadership that allows them to connect what they know in this technology to what the enterprises need.
Right, and that's the that's TK, right? So like at the end of the day, that's why CEO of the year this year on Cloud Wars, right? Like that's awesome. But the point is, today, if you're the Amazon board today, you have lots of great things you can say. And I think if you can set it free, if you will, before your lunch gets eaten, this becomes a really interesting battle. But I'm telling you, I can't believe Andy actually believes this. I don't know him, but it feels inconceivable that that's actually what he believes. But if they're delusional enough to think that like this isn't a problem for their business, I would not want to be reassessing this conversation in 12 to 18 months, right? Because this is not white space anymore. There are real competitors with their own advantages and their own talented leadership teams that are coming for that business. You got to set Amazon Web Services free at this point.
Sean, that's very intriguing. Let me mention one more thing, then you can have the last word here. It was about a year ago, early in 2019, that Microsoft, I think it's just the way Microsoft does things, and it ties in a little what you said a minute ago about not just their technology, but how they think and how they move and how they go to market and how they communicate. They started early in 2019 releasing a series of strategic wins they had with Walmart, with Albertsons, with the Walgreens Boots Alliance, on and on, just boom, boom, boom. Another the biggest retail companies in the world. And it showed photos of the CEOs of those companies with Satya Nadella. And they were saying, these are transformational moves that are going to take us into the next decade. They're helping the one big grocery store company, Kroger, was another one of their huge wins. They're helping Kroger become a software company. So given those two perspectives there, you've got Andy Jassy trying to say it's folklore that we disrupt industries. And then over here, you've got CEO Satya Nadella standing up with the CEOs of these retail companies, showing how at a CEO level, they're doing transformational things in a retail space without ever, Nadella never mentions Amazon, but clearly he's saying, hey, you got other choices out there. They might not have as clean a business model coming into this as we do. So I agree, it's really becoming a problem for them. But I'm really intrigued by the degree to which you say they not only need to break apart, but if they do, the incredible regard in which AWS would be held. That's very powerful, Sean.
Well, I mean, so you do the rankings. How much revenue is Amazon AWS doing these days?
It was $35 billion in 19.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. I mean, that's a really awesome gross margin. Like that's a incredibly valuable technology business, and it would literally be a bet on cloud computing, which you've chronicled well in Cloud Wars. Like that, this is the future of technology, right? And so if you want to make a bet on the future of technology, you now have this completely independent asset. And I think you would see if AWS was a standalone business, you'd see them doing the same type of business model explorations and JVs, like the similar things that you see Microsoft able to do, AWS would be able to do. But I mean, is the CEO of Kroger going to really stand up on stage with the CEO of Amazon, who also happens to own Whole Foods? Like, it's just it's not crazy. It's not a play that they can make if they're still part of Amazon, and they need to be able to make those kind of plays. And they're doing themselves no favors spinning a story to Wall Street, or even more scary, if they actually believe that's true. That's the only thing worse than that this is spin. Like literally, like there's a bad scenario, which is that they're spinning something that they know is false. This company needs to be set free, and it would be incredibly valuable if it was. And I saw the quote from Goldman Sachs conference and immediately thought to myself, well, that prediction is looking, I mean, these predictions that we did at the end of the year, right? They're just kind of fun, but that's a prediction that like, I'm like feeling much better about here in February than I was when we made it in November.
No, Sean, that was a good one. Now all we need to do is have Walmart by FedEx.
Okay.
And, you're batting 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Microsoft buy Slack. That's the other one, as they make, I mean, we don't have time to get to this today, but the Teams thing, like, come on, boys. Like, we could make a similar conversation about the need to think strategically about Slack at this point, right? So.
Yeah. Well, Sean, great stuff. Always a pleasure to be with you. Interesting, background here for you today. Thanks for making the time to jump in. Really interesting perspectives about AWS. We'll see how this unfolds.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Thanks to all of you folks for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. Sean Ammirati with his monthly Ammirati on Innovation. We'll see you next time.